Chát đã nói. In the quiet town of Cedar Hollow, young Levi Hartwell discovers Scout, a wounded German shepherd tied and left to suffer in his own backyard. But who could be responsible for such cruelty, and why does a mysterious stranger suddenly appear, desperately searching for this dog? When Levi bravely chooses to protect Scout, a shocking secret about Scout's past unfolds, putting them both in grave danger. Would you risk everything to save a dog no one else dare protect? Comment below what you think Levi should have done. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and friendship. Cedar Hollow, Vermont, always wore autumn with a nostalgic charm. The air was thick with the comforting scent of burning leaves, and golden brown foliage carpeted quiet streets, rustling gently beneath passing feet. The distant hills were shrouded in a soft mist that whispered promises of an approaching winter. That particular late afternoon, the skies hung low and gray, heavy with clouds swollen from recent rain, a chill penetrating deep into bones. In yards across town, pumpkins perched cheerfully, unaware of the gloom that lingered just behind the carefully decorated doors. At the edge of town, in a modest clapboard house painted faded sage green, lived Levi Hartwell. Levi, a gentle boy of 9, carried the quiet sadness that followed him like his own shadow. He was slender and small for his age, his hair sandy blonde, falling messily over his wide, thoughtful eyes the color of rain clouds. Levi rarely smiled now, and when he did, it was faint, tinged with longing. 2 years prior, his father had vanished during a terrible flood, an event that left a permanent mark on Levi's soul. Since then, the boy had retreated into a silence that made him feel safer than words ever could. His mother, Eliza Hartwell, had grown thin from the struggle of holding together what remained of her family. Her hazel eyes, once bright with laughter, were now heavy with fatigue and worry. She moved about their modest home with an efficiency that masked the emotional weight pressing down upon her small, delicate frame. Though patient and tender with Levi and his little sister, Maddie, she often retreated into herself, fighting battles in silence, worried her children might see her cracks. Levi had learned to watch her from afar, fearing to add more weight to her already heavy heart. That afternoon, Levi wandered quietly in the backyard, wearing a faded blue hoodie that once belonged to his father. He shuffled absently through damp leaves, his mind drifting to memories that flickered like old film reels, bright and painful. Maddie, only 4, was inside taking her nap, and Eliza, exhausted from her shift at the local diner, was resting on the worn sofa in the living room. Levi appreciated these quiet moments outdoors, away from questions he had no answers to, away from eyes filled with pity and worry. Suddenly, a faint, trembling whimper drifted toward him, carried softly on the breeze. Levi stopped abruptly, his heartbeat quickening. He tilted his head slightly, listening intently, breath held tight. There was again a low, pained sound, muffled but unmistakable. Without hesitation, Levi moved toward the source, heart pounding now with nervous energy. Past the swing set rusted with neglect, through clusters of brambles tangled behind their weathered shed, Levi came upon an old oak tree hidden in the corner of the garden, partly obscured by overgrown ivy and dense shrubs. At its base, his breath caught sharply in his chest. Tied cruelly around the thick trunk, ropes biting into its skin, lay a large German shepherd, struggling weakly against restraints it had no strength left to break. Levi approached cautiously, eyes wide with disbelief. The dog was massive but gaunt, its once powerful frame now shrunken beneath from matted with blood and mud. Deep wounds marked its body, ugly reminders of brutality. Levi's chest tightened painfully, his small fingers trembling as he reached out slowly, whispering gentle reassurances. The dog's head lifted slightly, eyes dark and wary, filled with fear and desperation. But something in Levi's gentle voice made the animal pause, softening its frightened gaze. "It's okay," Levi whispered gently, carefully extending his small hand toward the battered creature. "I won't hurt you." As Levi knelt beside the trembling animal, examining the crude knots around its torso, his stomach twisted in disgust. Who could do this? And why? These were questions too big for a 9-year-old, but Levi pushed them aside, focused only on the urgent need before him. He tugged desperately at the ropes, fingers quickly reddening, nails splitting painfully, yet the knots held fast. Frustration welled up in his throat, hot tears pricking behind his eyes, but he swallowed hard, determined not to give in. "I'll get you out," he murmured firmly, his voice shaking yet resolute. "I promise." Levi scrambled back toward the shed, his heart hammering loudly. Inside, amid cobwebbed gardening tools, rusted shovels, and old paint cans stacked carelessly, Levi found a dull pocket knife belonging to his father. With renewed hope, he rushed back, gripping the tool tightly, his palms sweaty despite the cold. Returning swiftly to the dog, Levi whispered soft apologies as he carefully sliced through the ropes, strands breaking slowly under his shaky hands. The dog's breathing eased slightly with each cut rope, but remained limp and silent, eyes now watching Levi with something that felt strangely like trust. Finally, as the last rope snapped free, the dog slid weakly to the ground, its large head resting heavily on Levi's lap. For a long moment, neither moved, the garden quiet but for the wind whispering through bare branches overhead. Levi gently stroked the animal's fur, feeling a bond already forming between them, rooted in shared pain and quiet strength. "You'll be okay," Levi said softly, more to himself than the dog, determined to believe it. He knew his mother would disapprove of another burden added to their fragile household. She had enough worries without a wounded dog. Yet Levi also knew with sudden, stubborn clarity that he could never abandon this animal now. Scout. Yes, that felt right. He would call him Scout. Levi carefully eased Scout onto his feet, coaxing him gently toward the hidden storage space behind the shed, a place he knew his mother seldom visited. Inside, Scout lowered himself cautiously onto a pile of old blankets Levi had quickly arranged, exhausted yet somehow calm now in Levi's quiet presence. Levi pulled the shed door shut slowly, his heart heavy with the responsibility he had silently taken on. Scout watched him quietly, his breathing deepening into uneasy rest, eyes slowly closing in trust. Levi lingered, watching Scout sleep, his young mind already planning how to secretly nurse him back to health. Scout's survival had become Levi's new purpose, a chance to heal something inside himself, a chance to feel useful and strong again, after 2 long years of feeling powerless against loss. He knew it would be difficult. His mother couldn't find out, not yet, but Levi felt a rare surge of hope stirring in his chest, warming him against the cold autumn air. As Levi turned toward the house, glancing once more at the sleeping dog, determination settled firmly into his heart. Scout had needed a savior today, and Levi had answered. But secretly, Levi wondered if perhaps it was he who needed Scout even more. Levi Hartwell rose before the first rays of sunlight reached Cedar Hollow, Vermont. Outside, dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and pale gold, though the chill of autumn remained stubbornly in place, clinging to each breath like frost. Quietly, Levi slipped from beneath the patchwork quilt that once belonged to his grandmother, tiptoeing carefully through the narrow hallway so as not to wake his mother, Eliza, or his sister, Maddie. The floorboards beneath his small, socked feet creaked softly, causing him to pause, breath held, until silence resumed. Levi's heart pounded nervously in his chest. Keeping Scout hidden was becoming harder than he had imagined. In the small kitchen, he quietly opened the cupboard, grabbing a few slices of bread and leftover pieces of chicken wrapped tightly in foil from last night's supper. He glanced anxiously over his shoulder toward his mother's closed bedroom door, then grabbed the half-empty jar of peanut butter. It wasn't ideal food for a dog, especially one in Scout's fragile condition, but Levi had little choice. Each day, he took small amounts, careful to keep his actions hidden from his mother's watchful eyes. Levi carefully opened the back door, the hinges groaning just enough to send a chill of panic through his veins, but no sound came from inside the house. The yard was blanketed in early morning mist, dampening the world into muted silence. His breath formed soft clouds as he hurried toward the old wooden shed behind the garden fence, his sneakers leaving faint impressions in the dew-covered grass. Inside the shed, Scout lay quietly on a makeshift bed of blankets and old towels, his dark, soulful eyes watching Levi intently. Despite his condition, Scout's ears perked slightly at the boy's approach, and his tail thumped weakly against the rough wooden floor. Levi dropped gently to his knees, placing the food on a small tin plate beside the dog. "I brought breakfast," Levi whispered, his voice tender and soft as he stroked Scout's coarse fur. Scout sniffed at the chicken pieces cautiously, then began to eat slowly, clearly weakened by his injuries. With Scout distracted, Levi carefully inspected the dog's wounds. Many were shallow cuts and bruises, but a deep gash along Scout's left hind leg was concerning, the edges raw and inflamed. Levi had tried to clean it yesterday with warm water and soap, but the wound clearly needed better treatment. Antibiotics or ointment, supplies Levi had no idea how to obtain without raising suspicion. As Levi gently moved Scout's fur aside, something glinted softly around the dog's thick neck. It was a collar, hidden until now beneath the layers of fur and dirt. Levi leaned closer, heart racing with curiosity. The collar wasn't ordinary. It was sturdy, military style, crafted from durable canvas and metal clasps, and engraved on the underside was a series of cryptic numbers, SCT 77548. Levi stared in bewilderment, tracing each digit with his fingertips, his curiosity deepening. Who was Scout, and why had someone cruelly abandoned him here of all places? Levi's thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the sound of footsteps crunching through fallen leaves on the other side of the fence. Heart hammering, he froze, glancing anxiously at Scout, who had raised his head, ears alert. Levi crept to the shed's small, grimy window, peering carefully through the cloudy glass. Outside stood their neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Finch, a widow in her late 60s who had lived next door longer than Levi had been alive. She was petite and wiry, with short, silvery white hair neatly tucked beneath a woolen cap. Eleanor was known throughout Cedar Hollow for her no-nonsense demeanor and razor-sharp eyes that missed little. Though stern in appearance, Levi knew from past encounters she had a soft spot for children and animals, often leaving scraps out for stray cats that wandered through her immaculate garden. Today, Eleanor stood at the fence line, her eyes squinting suspiciously toward the Hartwell's yard, clearly aware something unusual was happening. Levi ducked quickly from view, breathing heavily. He felt Scout's eyes on him and placed a reassuring hand on the dog's shoulder. "Stay quiet," Levi murmured, more to himself than to Scout. Scout seemed to understand, laying his head back onto the blankets silently. Minutes passed painfully slow until Eleanor's footsteps finally retreated toward her house. Levi sighed with relief, yet anxiety churned within him. It was only a matter of time before someone discovered Scout. As morning brightened, Levi reluctantly left Scout resting in the shed, carefully hiding the collar beneath Scout's fur once again. He knew he couldn't risk bringing it inside. If his mother found out, she'd surely demand answers Levi wasn't prepared to give. Inside the house, Eliza had woken and was bustling around the kitchen, her delicate frame moving with quiet determination as she prepared breakfast. Levi slipped inside, trying to appear casual despite his racing heart. "Morning," Eliza greeted softly, glancing briefly at Levi, worry creasing her brows. "You look tired, sweetheart. Everything okay?" Levi swallowed nervously, forcing a small, reassuring smile. "I'm okay, Mom," he murmured, sitting quickly at the small table and avoiding her concerned gaze. Maddie wandered sleepily into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, her curly blonde hair tangled from sleep. She smiled sweetly at Levi, crawling into the chair beside him. "Morning, Levi," she yawned. Levi felt a pang of guilt as he glanced toward Maddie, innocent and unaware. Keeping secrets from his family weighed heavily on him, yet protecting Scout felt equally important. Across town that same morning, another figure arrived quietly in Cedar Hollow. Vincent Harlow was a tall, imposing man, perhaps 50, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build evident even beneath his dark, weathered coat. His rugged face bore hard lines from years of bitterness, and his cold gray eyes scanned the small-town streets as he parked his battered black pickup truck in front of Cedar Hollow's diner. Vincent's presence immediately drew cautious attention from the townspeople as he strode purposefully into the diner. Despite their suspicious glances, Vincent's stern expression revealed nothing, his dark demeanor silently warning others to keep their distance. Sliding into a corner booth, he impatiently ordered black coffee from the nervous waitress, Jessica, a shy girl barely out of high school, who trembled slightly as she poured his drink. "You seen anyone around town with a dog lately?" "Big German Shepherd," Vincent asked abruptly, his voice harsh and demanding. Jessica shook her head quickly, eyes wide with discomfort, retreating hastily to the kitchen. Vincent sipped his coffee bitterly, irritation clear upon his hardened face. Scout was near, he knew it, and he would retrieve the dog at any cost. Back home, Levi spent the afternoon quietly planning, determined to find medical help for Scout without alerting his mother. He decided his only hope might lie with Mrs. Finch. Although stern, she had always seemed kind beneath her strict exterior, and Levi knew from experience that she had tended wounded animals before. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Levi stood nervously at Mrs. Finch's doorstep, heart racing. Gathering his courage, he knocked softly, shivering slightly from nerves rather than cold. The door swung open, revealing Eleanor Finch standing with arms crossed, her keen eyes assessing Levi carefully. "Something you need, Levi?" she asked evenly, her voice firm yet not unkind. "Mrs. Finch," Levi began hesitantly, meeting her piercing gaze with newfound determination. "I need your help. There's a dog, injured and hiding in my shed. Please don't tell my mom. I don't know who else to trust." Eleanor's expression softened slightly as she studied Levi's earnest face. After a thoughtful pause, she nodded curtly, stepping aside. "Come inside, Levi. Let's talk." The following morning, Cedar Hollow woke beneath a sky painted a somber shade of steel gray, thick clouds rolling gently over the nearby hills. It was colder today. An icy breeze whispered through the trees, scattering brittle autumn leaves along the empty streets. From the kitchen window, Levi watched anxiously as Mrs. Eleanor Finch moved quietly through her tidy garden, a small basket tucked under her arm. Her promise to help Scout weighed heavily on his mind, both comforting and terrifying. Levi hoped desperately she could find medicine for Scout's injuries without alerting his mother, Eliza, who remained unaware of his secret burden. Meanwhile, down at the edge of town, the morning patrons at Betty's diner were whispering amongst themselves, their breakfast temporarily forgotten. Cedar Hollow was a place where newcomers stood out, and none more so than the tall, stern-faced man, now seated alone at the corner booth, carefully watching everyone who passed. Vincent Harlow was unmistakably imposing. Even seated, he towered in his chair. His broad shoulders strained slightly beneath the worn black coat that fell nearly to his ankles. He was perhaps in his 50s, though his hardened expression and close-cropped silver streak hair made him appear even older. Dark brows sat heavily above narrowed eyes, cool and uninviting, and his hands, large and calloused, gripped a coffee mug so tightly it seemed as if it might shatter. Despite his silence, whispers had quickly spread. Harlow had been asking around the previous day about a missing dog, a large German Shepherd, supposedly lost in the vicinity. His vague explanations and cold demeanor did little to ease suspicions. The waitress at Betty's, Jessica, young and timid, her blonde hair tucked nervously behind her ears, moved cautiously around his table. Jessica was 19, thin and soft-spoken, easily flustered, but observant beyond her years. She had noticed something unsettling in the stranger's manner and discreetly called Sheriff Owen Bishop, alerting him to the odd visitor. Sheriff Bishop, a stocky man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair cropped short beneath his uniform cap, had served Cedar Hollow faithfully for almost 2 decades. Owen's calm, authoritative presence and gentle humor had earned him trust and affection from nearly everyone in town. Today, however, worry creased his forehead as he stepped through the diner's door, adjusting his brown sheriff jacket against the chill. He exchanged a quick nod with Jessica, then approached the stranger's booth. "Morning," Owen greeted calmly, studying the man's guarded expression. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" Vincent's cool gaze lifted slowly from his coffee, scrutinizing Owen before he finally gestured slightly toward the empty seat. "Be my guest," Vincent replied evenly, his deep voice laced with faint impatience. Owen sat down, observing Vincent carefully. "Folks mentioned you've been looking for a lost dog, a German shepherd. Mind telling me why you're so interested in this particular animal?" Vincent leaned forward slightly, expression remaining closed. "I own him. Valuable animal, trained and temperamental. Disappeared a few days ago. I'm hoping someone around here might have found him." Owen noted the subtle hesitation in Vincent's words. "And you just happened to lose your dog around Cedar Hollow?" Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly, but his tone remained measured. "Passing through nearby when he escaped. Thought he might have wandered into town. He has a habit of finding places with food." Owen didn't press further, sensing deception, yet deciding caution was best. He rose slowly, offering Vincent a courteous nod. "Well, Mr. Harlow," Vincent replied flatly. "Mr. Harlow," Owen continued. "I'll let you know if anyone sees anything. You staying around town?" Vincent didn't immediately respond. Instead, he reached into his coat, withdrawing a crumpled business card and placing it wordlessly on the table. Owen picked it up cautiously. A local motel, modest and isolated just outside Cedar Hollow. He nodded, tucking it into his pocket. "I'll be in touch if I hear anything." Vincent watched him leave, eyes coldly suspicious. Meanwhile, across the diner, Jessica sent Sheriff Bishop a discreet, anxious glance. Owen nodded reassuringly, silently promising he would handle this mystery. Later that afternoon, Owen stopped by the small veterinary clinic near the town's edge. Dr. Abigail Pierce greeted him with a friendly smile, warm despite the weariness evident in her deep green eyes. Abigail was in her mid-30s, slender and graceful, her dark auburn hair pulled back neatly in a ponytail. Calm and intelligent, Abigail was fiercely dedicated to her work and deeply protective of the animals she treated. Her empathy stemmed partly from a childhood spent nursing injured wildlife back to health, a compassion that defined her interactions with both animals and townspeople. "Owen," she said warmly, setting aside a clipboard covered in neatly written notes. "What's got you looking troubled today?" Owen sighed quietly, leaning against the counter. "We've got a stranger in town, Vincent Harlow. Claims he's looking for his German shepherd, but something about the man feels off. Thought maybe you'd heard or seen something unusual." Abigail frowned slightly, considering. "No lost dogs reported here recently. But," she hesitated, lowering her voice, "I did have a strange call yesterday. Eleanor Finch asked about antibiotics for treating wounds, animal wounds specifically. Said it was for a friend's pet. She seemed evasive, which isn't like her." Owen raised an eyebrow, thoughtfully. Eleanor Finch had lived next door to the Hartwells for years. Interesting. Eleanor wouldn't hide something without good reason. "I agree," Abigail responded softly. "I intended to follow up with her later, quietly. If an animal is injured and needs treatment, I'd like to help." Owen nodded slowly, considering the connections forming in his mind. "Let's keep this between us for now. I don't want to alarm anyone prematurely. I'll visit Eleanor tonight, see what she knows." As afternoon faded into dusk, Levi anxiously watched from his bedroom window as Eleanor Finch slipped discreetly through their yard, approaching the shed. Moments later, Eleanor quietly knocked on their back door. Levi hurried down to greet her, heart pounding nervously. "Eleanor," Eliza greeted in surprise from the kitchen, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. "What brings you here this evening?" Eleanor offered a polite, reserved smile, her eyes briefly meeting Levi's. Needed some sugar if you have any to spare. Eliza chuckled lightly, gesturing toward Levi. Levi, dear, could you fetch Mrs. Finch some sugar? Levi quickly complied, handing Eleanor the requested sugar and receiving a small, meaningful nod from her as he did. Moments later, Eleanor left, and Levi excused himself, slipping quietly to the shed. Inside, he found a small bottle of antibiotics hidden carefully beneath Scout's blanket. His heart swelled with gratitude toward Eleanor's quiet, thoughtful support. That night, long after darkness settled across Cedar Hollow, Levi administered Scout's medicine carefully, feeling relief when the dog calmly accepted his care. Yet worry still clung persistently at Levi's heart, knowing Scout was being sought by someone dangerous, someone whose motives remained frighteningly unclear. In the motel room at Cedar Hollow's edge, Vincent Harlow paced restlessly, frustration building. Cedar Hollow was too small, too quiet to hide a dog like Scout for long. He would find him, reclaim the animal, and disappear before the sheriff or anyone else realized exactly who or what Vincent Harlow truly represented. With determination sharpening his cold features, Vincent glanced at the leather collar in his hand, matching precisely the one Scout wore. This wasn't just about retrieving a valuable dog. Scout carried secrets Vincent couldn't afford to let surface. The next morning in Cedar Hollow brought no comfort, as the skies remained stubbornly gray, swollen clouds drifting low above the rooftops, warning of an early snowfall. A chill lingered heavily in the air, seeping into bones and leaving the town unusually subdued. Levi Hartwell woke feeling uneasy, a sense of dread pressing down upon him like a physical weight. He had hardly slept, his mind filled with worry for Scout. Rising quietly, he dressed quickly and slipped out the back door, the cold air biting at his cheeks. As he opened the old shed's door, a spike of panic shot through his chest. Scout lay listlessly on the makeshift bed, his breathing labored, and his body shivering despite the blankets covering him. Levi knelt quickly beside him, gently placing a palm on Scout's forehead. Heat radiated fiercely against his skin. Fear tightened Levi's throat as he examined Scout's wounds. The deep gash on the dog's leg had turned a frightening shade of angry red, swollen and clearly infected. Scout whimpered faintly, turning dark eyes toward Levi, filled with pain and confusion. Levi's heart broke seeing Scout so weak, knowing he needed help beyond his own limited means. In that moment, Levi made a decision. He knew he couldn't hide Scout any longer. The risk was too high, the consequences too dire. With determination, he bundled Scout in an old blanket, whispering comforting words as he did, then set out toward the small veterinary clinic run by Dr. Abigail Pierce. He moved quietly through Cedar Hollow's quiet streets, hoping desperately that no one would notice him or question his urgent errand. Reaching the clinic, Levi pushed through the front door, a small bell above chiming softly to announce his arrival. Dr. Abigail Pierce emerged quickly from the back room, surprise clear upon her delicate features. "Levi, what's wrong?" she asked immediately, noticing his tense expression and the heavy burden he carried. Abigail approached quickly, her eyes widening when she saw Scout's condition. "I need help," Levi blurted, tears threatening his resolve. "Please, Scout's really sick. I didn't know where else to go." Abigail gently took Scout into her arms, quickly assessing the dog's condition. She motioned Levi toward the examination room, her movements calm yet swift. "Come quickly," she urged, leading him inside. Carefully placing Scout onto the examination table, Abigail began her examination, gently checking Scout's fever and carefully inspecting his wounds. As she did, Levi felt his secret bubbling to the surface, words rushing out in a nervous torrent. "I found Scout tied to a tree behind our house. He was hurt really badly. I tried to keep him hidden because I knew Mom wouldn't let me keep him, but he's getting worse." Abigail paused briefly, her eyes softening with understanding as she listened. She gently stroked Scout's head, soothing him while preparing antiseptics and antibiotics. Abigail was thoughtful quietly competent, her graceful hands moving quickly and efficiently. Her calm voice broke the tense silence. "You did the right thing coming here, Levi. This dog needs serious medical care. Can you tell me anything more about him?" Levi hesitated, then slowly removed Scout's strange collar, handing it nervously to Abigail. "I found this collar on him. It has numbers. Do you know what it means?" Abigail examined the collar closely, her brows knitting together in deep concentration. Recognition sparked in her green eyes as she quietly repeated the engraved numbers, SCT 77548. Her face turned grim, a sudden tension filling the small room. "Levi," she spoke slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I believe Scout is a military-trained German Shepherd. These numbers match experimental programs from years ago, ones I've heard rumors about. There were serious ethical concerns, abuse, mistreatment. Many programs were shut down, but this code is unmistakable. Scout must have been one of those dogs." Levi's eyes widened in shock, dread pooling in his stomach. Abigail placed a gentle hand on Levi's shoulder, trying to reassure him. "You've been brave, Levi. I promise I'll do everything I can to help Scout. But if someone is looking for him, it could mean trouble. Stay here. I need to make a call." Abigail stepped into her office, picking up the phone with trembling fingers. She dialed Sheriff Owen Bishop's personal number, her heart racing as he answered. "Owen," she began urgently, keeping her voice low but clear, "Levi Hartwell brought in a severely injured dog, one Vincent Harlow has been searching for. I think this dog was part of a military program shut down years ago under suspicion of abuse. I'm worried Levi and Scout might be in danger." Owen's voice tightened in response. "Vincent's still in town. I saw him earlier. I'll head over immediately. Keep them both safe until I arrive." Back at the clinic, Levi gently stroked Scout's fur, tears silently streaming down his cheeks. Scout looked up weakly, his eyes filled with quiet trust. Abigail returned, her expression firm and protective. "Levi, Sheriff Bishop is on his way. We'll protect you and Scout. You did the right thing coming here." Across town, meanwhile, Vincent Harlow paced restlessly in his motel room, growing increasingly impatient. Word had reached him quickly about Levi's desperate visit to the veterinary clinic. Vincent's hands shook with barely contained rage, knowing his plans were unraveling rapidly. There was too much at stake. Scout had been specially trained, implanted with sensitive information, knowledge that must never surface. Vincent's past was marred by harshness. Once a respected military trainer, his cruelty had eventually cost him his position and reputation. Retrieving Scout was his final chance at redemption, or at least to erase damaging evidence. Deciding he could wait no longer, Vincent grabbed his coat, storming from the room, determined to confront whoever stood between him and Scout. Back at the clinic, Abigail and Levi waited anxiously. Sheriff Bishop arrived swiftly, entering with quiet authority, his presence instantly reassuring. Owen approached Levi gently, offering a comforting smile despite the seriousness in his eyes. "You've been brave, son." Abigail filled me in. "We'll ensure you're both safe." Abigail nodded gravely. "Vincent Harlow won't stop until he finds Scout. We must protect them both." Owen's expression hardened with resolve. "Agreed. I'll place extra patrols near your house and here at the clinic. Levi, for now, Scout should remain under Abigail's care. I'll speak to your mother personally to explain everything." Levi felt a wave of relief wash over him, gratitude nearly overwhelming. Scout seemed to sense Levi's calming presence, closing his eyes in weary trust. As dusk settled gently over Cedar Hollow, Abigail carefully tended to Scout, antibiotics beginning to fight the infection, bringing the loyal dog's fever slowly under control. Levi remained quietly by Scout's side, his courage bolstered by the protective presence of Sheriff Bishop and Abigail. Still, unease lingered, knowing Vincent remained somewhere near, dangerous and desperate. As the darkness deepened outside, Levi silently vowed he would never abandon Scout, no matter what dangers might come. At the same time, Vincent watched the clinic from a distance, hidden in shadows, his cold gaze fixed bitterly on the small building. He knew now that retrieving Scout would be far more difficult than anticipated. Yet failure was not an option. He would wait, bide his time, until opportunity arose again. The quiet town of Cedar Hollow held secrets far deeper and darker than anyone imagined. Secrets Vincent Harlow was determined would never see daylight. Night fell over Cedar Hollow swiftly, cloaking the small Vermont town in heavy darkness. It had snowed lightly throughout the afternoon, dusting streets and rooftops with a thin, ghostly layer that sparkled softly beneath the pale glow of distant streetlights. Inside Abigail Pierce's veterinary clinic, a tense silence lingered. Levi Hartwell sat quietly beside Scout, gently stroking the dog's thick fur as Scout slept restlessly on the clinic's padded examination table. Levi's heart thumped anxiously in his chest, each passing moment amplifying his unease. Though Scout's fever had begun to wane slightly thanks to Abigail's skillful care, the dog remained weak, occasionally shuddering in pain or whimpering softly in troubled sleep. Levi's mind raced, haunted by the lurking threat of Vincent Harlow. Sheriff Owen Bishop had promised to keep watch, yet a gnawing feeling persisted in Levi's gut that something was terribly wrong. Across town, Vincent paced inside his dimly lit motel room, his anger building to a fever pitch. He knew time was running short. Law enforcement now watched him carefully, thanks to the meddling veterinarian and that inquisitive sheriff. Vincent's gruff features were twisted in agitation beneath the dim lamplight, his steely eyes glinting with dark determination. Once a respected military trainer, Vincent's cruelty had stripped him of everything he held dear. Years of bitterness had hardened his heart, and now Scout represented not just a valuable asset, but a potential threat, proof of Vincent's unethical practices that could put him behind bars permanently. Vincent's mind churned with dark plans, his anger coalescing into dangerous resolve. He would reclaim Scout tonight, and no child or small-town sheriff would stand in his way. Carefully, Vincent donned his long black coat, the fabric worn and faded at the edges from years of use, and exited the motel silently, heading toward Abigail's veterinary clinic. His breath clouded faintly in the cold night air, footsteps crunching lightly against the freshly fallen snow. Each step closer to the clinic sharpened Vincent's focus, his grip tightening around a pair of heavy gloves intended for restraint. His shadowy figure moved swiftly through the sleepy town, barely noticeable beneath the shroud of night. Inside the clinic, Abigail stood in her office, conversing quietly with Sheriff Bishop, concern etched deeply upon her gentle features. Abigail's usually composed expression was strained, her dark auburn hair pulled loosely back, revealing the fatigue that tugged at the corners of her eyes. Owen Bishop stood tall, his sturdy frame exuding reassuring calm, yet worry reflected clearly in his gaze. "We'll keep patrols close by tonight," Owen assured her quietly, nodding firmly. Abigail exhaled slowly, nodding gratefully in return. Neither could shake the unease that hung thickly between them, an unspoken fear about Vincent's unpredictable intentions. Meanwhile, Levi had drifted into a troubled sleep, head resting lightly against Scout's warm flank. He awoke abruptly, pulse quickening, senses alert. A strange noise outside, a faint scratching at the clinic's rear door, had stirred him from sleep. Levi's eyes flickered anxiously toward Scout, who now sat up, ears perked attentively. A low growl vibrated through Scout's weakened frame, his dark eyes fixed intently upon the door. Levi rose shakily, heart pounding. Approaching cautiously, he peered through a gap in the blinds and saw a tall, unmistakable figure moving stealthily in the shadows. Vincent Harlow had arrived, his eyes glittering dangerously in the moonlight. Vincent's movements were methodical, professional, betraying his military training. In mere seconds, he had quietly jimmied the door open, slipping silently inside. Fear surged through Levi, but courage anchored his trembling limbs. Scout stood protectively before Levi, hackles raised, a warning growl rumbling deeply in his throat, though weakness trembled noticeably in his legs. Vincent emerged from the shadows, looming tall and menacing, his expression coldly determined. "Step aside, boy," Vincent warned softly, voice dangerously calm. "That dog belongs to me." Levi stood firm, fists clenched defiantly at his sides, small frame trembling but unyielding. "No," he replied steadily, eyes meeting Vincent's without flinching. "Scout isn't yours. I won't let you hurt him again." Vincent's gaze narrowed dangerously, rage simmering beneath his composed exterior. "You have no idea what you're protecting. That dog is dangerous, evidence of things you can't even comprehend. Now move." Levi's voice shook slightly, but remained resolute. "Scout protected me, and I'm protecting him." Vincent lunged forward suddenly, losing patience, his powerful frame charging toward Levi with alarming speed. Levi braced himself instinctively, terrified yet refusing to back down. In a surge of desperation, Scout sprang forward despite his injuries, snarling fiercely as he placed himself bravely between Levi and Vincent. Teeth bared, eyes blazing with defiant strength, Scout's fierce stance forced Vincent to halt, stunned briefly by the dog's fierce protective instincts. In that tense instant, the clinic's front doors burst open, Sheriff Bishop and two deputies rushing inside, weapons drawn and ready. Owen's commanding voice echoed clearly, authority resonating through each word. "Vincent Harlow, freeze. Hands up now." Vincent spun toward the sudden intrusion, momentarily off balance. His hesitation allowed Scout to retreat slightly, guarding Levi protectively but sinking painfully to the floor, weakened further by the exertion. Levi dropped swiftly beside Scout, heart pounding with relief and fear intertwined. Sheriff Bishop advanced swiftly, deputies quickly restraining Vincent, whose furious protests echoed bitterly through the quiet clinic. Levi hugged Scout gently, tears streaming silently down his face. Abigail moved quickly, kneeling beside them to carefully assess Scout's condition. Her skilled hands examined Scout's wounds again, concern etched clearly upon her gentle features. Levi met Abigail's worried gaze pleadingly. "Will Scout be okay?" Abigail gently stroked Scout's fur, soothing both dog and boy simultaneously. "Scout's brave, Levi. He'll pull through, especially with you watching over him." Vincent, now restrained and escorted roughly toward waiting patrol cars, cast one last bitter glance at Scout, defeat darkening his expression. As Vincent disappeared into custody, Owen approached Levi and Abigail solemnly, expression filled with protective reassurance. "You're safe now," Owen promised gently, placing a steady hand on Levi's trembling shoulder. "Vincent won't harm Scout, or you ever again." As dawn's first fragile rays broke softly over Cedar Hollow, Abigail continued diligently caring for Scout, comforted by the resilience she saw in Levi's eyes. Scout lay quietly, his breathing steadying, sensing safety returning. Levi watched, relieved, tears finally drying upon his cheeks, understanding now that courage sometimes meant facing fears despite overwhelming odds. Across town, residents stirred slowly, unaware of the night's drama, yet sensing change lingering subtly in the air. In her modest home, Eliza Hartwell awakened, anxiety tightening her chest as she noticed Levi's bed empty. News would soon reach her, along with explanations long overdue. For now, however, the quiet clinic remained a sanctuary of healing and strength, guided by Abigail's compassionate care and Owen's steadfast protection. Levi held Scout gently, comforted by the dog's reassuring warmth. He had faced darkness bravely, stood firm against threats larger than himself. Beside him, Scout lay peacefully, secure now in Levi's unwavering devotion. Together, they had confronted shadows, emerging stronger, united by courage and love deeper than any fear could reach. As the quiet morning unfolded, Levi knew his journey with Scout had only just begun, but now they walked that path together, bound inseparably by loyalty, forged in fire, and trust proven in the darkest hour. In the gentle glow of morning sunlight that cascaded softly through the lace curtains of Abigail Pierce's clinic, Cedar Hollow began to stir with cautious optimism. The turbulent events of the previous night had rippled quickly through the small community, leaving residents stunned and deeply moved by the courage of young Levi Hartwell and his loyal companion, Scout. Scout lay peacefully on a comfortable bed Abigail had carefully prepared, his breathing steady and rhythmic, wounds neatly dressed. Fever finally subsided. The resilient German shepherd, who had endured cruelty and pain, now rested safely under watchful care, unaware of the quiet admiration building around him. Levi sat quietly nearby, eyes heavy with exhaustion but bright with relief. Beside him, Eliza Hartwell stood protectively, her gentle hand resting reassuringly on Levi's shoulder. Eliza, petite and slender with soft waves of chestnut hair falling just past her shoulders, had aged in subtle yet significant ways since losing her husband. The hardships she faced raising Levi and Maddie alone etched fine lines of fatigue around her hazel eyes, which now shone brightly with pride in her brave son. Eliza understood, perhaps truly for the first time, the deep loneliness and quiet strength Levi had carried since losing his father, watching now as his small hand gently stroked Scout's fur, offering comfort and receiving it in equal measure. News of Vincent Harlow's arrest spread rapidly, igniting shock and conversation throughout the town. Cedar Hollow had always been quiet, a community where neighbors greeted each other warmly on quaint sidewalks, conversations lingering longer than necessary beneath lampposts glowing softly at dusk. Now, stories of Vincent's dark past, his cruel dismissal from military service, mistreatment of animals under his care, had shattered the town's peaceful illusion, yet brought residents closer in their shared outrage and compassion. At the town center, Sheriff Owen Bishop navigated the gathering crowds outside his modest station. Owen's steadfast presence and calm demeanor reassured worried citizens who clustered closely, seeking answers. Despite the heavy burden on his shoulders, Owen stood tall, sturdy frame exuding quiet strength and dependability. His short, silver-flecked hair was slightly tousled from a sleepless night, yet his warm brown eyes met each resident's gaze firmly, offering measured reassurance. "Justice will be served," he repeated calmly to each inquiry. "Scout and Levi are safe, thanks to their courage, and yours." Dr. Abigail Pierce diligently tended to Scout's care, frequently checking his progress with practiced expertise. Her gentle demeanor and quiet resolve had solidified the town's deep respect for her, with residents visiting the clinic frequently, offering assistance, food, and words of gratitude. Abigail graciously accepted their support, humbled by the community's generosity. Her own past had shaped Abigail's devotion to caring for wounded animals. Her childhood spent rescuing injured wildlife had forged a lasting empathy and unwavering dedication. Now, in helping Scout recover, Abigail recognized her purpose anew, healing wounds both visible and unseen. As the days progressed, Scout's strength gradually returned, his eyes brighter, movements more assured. Soon, he rose from his bed to eagerly greet Levi, tail wagging energetically, his trust unwavering. Watching Scout's recovery, Levi felt newfound confidence bloom quietly within his chest, a realization of his strength and courage previously hidden beneath layers of grief and loneliness. Meanwhile, Vincent Harlow awaited trial, confined within county jail, bitterness clouding his every thought. His arrest had triggered official inquiries into the unethical military programs of the past, bringing previously hidden atrocities into harsh public light. As the truth emerged, demands for accountability rippled outward, echoing far beyond Cedar Hollow's modest borders. In the Hartwell home, quiet evenings became opportunities for healing. Eliza sat patiently beside Levi in the cozy living room, softly encouraging him to share stories about Scout and how they had found each other. Slowly, Levi opened up, recounting everything from Scout's frightened whimpers beneath the backyard oak to the desperate nights spent nursing him secretly in the garden shed. As Levi spoke, Eliza listened attentively, absorbing every detail, finally grasping the depth of her son's courage and compassion. Tears welled gently in her eyes as Levi finished, his voice steady and sincere. "I needed Scout," Levi admitted softly, "and he needed me. I couldn't leave him. I couldn't lose him too." Eliza reached out tenderly, pulling Levi into a protective embrace, their bond deepening profoundly in the gentle warmth of shared understanding and love. News continued spreading across town, each retelling amplifying the heroic bravery of Levi and Scout. Conversations echoed warmly throughout Cedar Hollow streets, grocery stores, and quaint coffee shops. Even Eleanor Finch, known for her stern demeanor and reserved nature, spoke openly and proudly about her small but significant role in helping Levi. Eleanor's gray hair, typically pinned neatly, now seemed softer somehow, her usually guarded eyes twinkling with quiet pride. Cedar Hollow, once quiet and unassuming, had become a town where tales of courage, kindness, and resilience rang clearly, forever altering the community spirit. Finally, Scout's recovery culminated in a town-wide gathering at Cedar Hollow's small park, its trees adorned with gentle string lights that shimmered warmly in the cool evening air. Residents arrived eagerly, carrying homemade dishes and heartfelt congratulations, each person eager to celebrate Levi and Scout's bravery. Sheriff Bishop delivered heartfelt words of gratitude, his voice resonating warmly through the assembled crowd. Abigail Pierce shared Scout's remarkable journey of healing, her calm presence reassuring and compassionate. Amidst the applause, Levi stood quietly beside Scout, feeling humbled by the warmth surrounding them. Scout gazed affectionately at Levi, the bond forged in shared trials now unbreakable. At the evening's conclusion, Sheriff Bishop announced officially that Scout would remain with Levi and his family permanently. Cheers erupted joyfully, the sound echoing warmly through the twilight air. Levi hugged Scout tightly, relief and happiness swelling in his chest. He understood fully now the powerful lessons this journey had taught him. Courage born from adversity, responsibility driven by compassion, love healing wounds invisible to the eye yet deeply felt by the heart. As townspeople dispersed slowly into the cool night, their spirits buoyed by renewed faith in kindness and bravery, Levi and Scout walked home together beneath softly glowing streetlights. Eliza followed quietly behind, smiling gently, Maddie's small hand clasped securely within hers. Cedar Hollow was forever changed, its quiet heart now vibrant with stories of hope and strength, echoing warmly through each resident's life. Levi knew challenges might still come, but walking alongside Scout, he felt unafraid, secure in friendship forged through courage and love strong enough to overcome any darkness. Above them, the moon hung softly in the night sky, illuminating their path forward. Scout's steady gait matched Levi's own steps perfectly, a silent promise made between loyal companions, bound inseparably by shared courage and unwavering trust. Together, they had faced shadows, conquered fears, and emerged stronger, forever connected by wounds healed through compassion and bravery. Levi smiled gently, understanding now his journey was truly just beginning, a path brightened profoundly by Scout's steadfast companionship and love. In life, sometimes courage comes from the most unexpected places. Like Levi, who found strength in protecting Scout, each of us can discover our own bravery by choosing compassion over fear. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can heal wounds, mend broken hearts, and restore faith in humanity. Remember, someone out there may be silently struggling, waiting for your courage and kindness to change their world. May God bless everyone who has watched this story and inspire us all to be brave in our everyday lives. Please share this beautiful message with your loved ones. Comment amen if you believe in the power of courage and love, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Amen.